What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video here with the Playbook Sports Podcast. My name is Colin. I'm the resident Cowboy fan here to preview their home game this weekend, Week 10 at home against the New York Giants, who are coming into this game limping, and honestly, a team that can't wait until the season ends. At this point, the Giants are playing for draft picks. Daniel Jones goes down last week. You feel bad for the guy. Obviously, he has not played up to his contract. He just got his past off season, but you never root injury on anybody, regardless how much you hate him, how much you like him. And to see him go down with an ACL, it's going to be a year-long process to recover. Not a great sight for the Giants fans. I feel for you guys.
Before we get into today's video, guys, I just want to give a special shout out to today's sponsors, starting with Gold Fine and Bowles, lawyers for the injured. Personal injury, workers' compensation, those are their two things, but any sort of legal advice, they're the people to call. Give them a phone call, 309-673-5144. Tell them we sent you, okay? And I'd also like to shout out SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video as well. Use promo code PlaybookSports on their website to get $20 off your first purchase of $30 or more. Let's get back to the video.
However, let's dive into the game here. Dallas Cowboys coming off a heartbreaking loss in Philadelphia last week, a game you feel like they should have won or could have won at least, did not win. So one team's coming off a loss. The other team's coming off a big loss to the Raiders with the new coach. Let's see what we can do this weekend, Dallas. Do not let me down. Let's not make this an Arizona Cardinals 2.0 game. Let's come out, take care of business. Thanks for coming. See you later. Keep it moving. So looking at the two teams here quickly. Let's start with the Giants, the road team. They're averaging 11.2 points per game, which is dead last in the league. They've scored 101 points in their 9 games played. 10 touchdowns scored in 9 games. 10 touchdowns, 9 games. That is awful, averaging just barely over 1 touchdown per game. Offensively, they're only 33% on third down, which also isn't great. They're only getting 1 in every 3 opportunities, averaging about 155 net passing yards per game compared to their 114 rushing per game, and with a -4 turnover differential as well. So the Giants haven't been great offensively in their running game or their passing game, and they're turning it over at a good margin as well. Looking at Tommy DeVito, who will be the starting quarterback this Sunday for the New York Giants. In the 2 games of action he's had this year, he's 17 of 27 passing with 174 yards, averaging just a little over 80 per game, 63% completion in the 2 games with 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. He's been sacked 8 times in 2 games. So he's averaging 4 sacks against per game. Now looking at Saquon Barkley, a guy who came back from, a slow start to the season, a little injury-riddled start to the season. Last 2 games, he's been phenomenal. Last week against the Raiders, he had 90 yards rushing, add another 23 through the air. It's 113 all-purpose yards. And you look at the game against the Jets, who have a really good defense in a rainy game, an ugly game. He had 128 yards rushing in that game. So Saquon Barkley is coming off 2 really good back-to-back performances, and that could be a key for the Giants to move the ball and have some sort of an opportunity this game is to get Saquon involved early and let him try to carry that workload offensively. Looking at the New York Giants, their receiving targets are abysmal. They went out this offseason to try to bolster that through the draft with Jalen Hyatt. They went out and got Paris Campbell, which, wasn't the biggest name at the time, but it's a move they were going to make. And obviously the one move who has made their leading receiver this season, Darren Waller. He's averaging just 48 yards per game, though, 384 yards in the 9 games played this season. He's our leading receiver. Looking at their receiving core as far as scoring the football, as far as touchdowns go, no wide receiver or tight end has more than 1 touchdown this year. In fact, the Giants leading the Giants player with the most receiving touchdowns this season, Saquon Barkley with 2. So no Giant has more than 2 receiving touchdowns this year, which I think is terrible. Just goes to show how bad their quarterback play and their offense in general has really been this season. Now let's look over the Dallas Cowboys side. Dak Prescott, last 3 games, he's been phenomenal. In his career, he's 11-2 against the Giants. He's won 11 straight against the Giants. As you know, he went 0-2 his rookie year. 2 of the Cowboys' 3 losses in that 13-3 rookie year were both to the Giants. Dak Prescott's won 11 straight against the Giants since his rookie year. Cowboys have won 11 straight at home this year, or dating back to last year. They won 11 straight home games. Everything's pointing to Dallas. 17-point spread, biggest spread of the weekend by far, maybe the biggest spread I've ever seen in the NFL game. Prime spot for Dallas to let us down. So let's go ahead. As I mentioned, Dak in the last 3 games, he's been phenomenal. Last 3 games since the San Francisco 49er debacle where he threw 3 interceptions and Dallas got blown out on national television, Dak Prescott, 75 of 105 passing. That's a 71.4% in his last 4 games. 950 yards, averaging a little over 300 yards per game in the last 3. 8 touchdowns to 1 interception. It came on that tip pick in the red zone against the Rams. But he's been sacked 13 times in the last 3 games. So it's not like he's had the most time The offensive line's been allowing pressure, and Dak's just been really, really good the last 3 weeks. Hopefully, that's something we can see move on in this game against the Giants and move on further into the season as well. So the next one up, let's talk about Tony Pollard here. A guy you really thought was going to take over the offensive workload. He was the big burst back last year. Why was he getting playing time when Pollard comes in? It's a lot more burst. There's more explosiveness. He's better at hitting the holes. He can hit the home run. He can break away. Zeke has no burst. Let's look at 2022 Ezekiel Elliott through 8 games compared to 2023 Tony Pollard through 8 games. 2022 Zeke, 124 carries. 2023 Pollard, 120 carries. So Zeke has 4 more carries through 8 games. Ezekiel Elliott, 485 rushing yards. Pollard, 474 rushing yards. So Zeke having 4 more carries, he has 11 more yards as well. Zeke, 6 rushing touchdowns for 8 games. Pollard, 2 rushing touchdowns for 8 games. One of these guys was washed up, no burst. You can't get rid of him fast enough. And the other guy was supposed to be this, knight in shining armor coming in and taking over the whole workload and being a dynamic running back, top 10 back in the league. And Tony Pollard has really been he's been lackluster. Honestly, he's been underwhelming the last few weeks and honestly the whole season. So hopefully Tony Pollard, this is a game where Dallas can figure some things out. Hopefully they're playing comfortably with the lead. They can try some things with not only Tony Pollard, but also with a couple of their receiving options as well, who also have been underwhelming. Let's talk about someone who has not been underwhelming. CeeDee Lamb, been fantastic. I've been preaching for weeks on end. Please target your biggest playmaker on offense. Please give him a shot. CeeDee Lamb, last 3 games, 30 catches on 37 targets. That's an 81% completion when you target CeeDee Lamb. 30 catches, 37 targets, 466 yards in 3 games, 2 touchdowns. He's averaging over 155 yards per game in the last 3 games. Please feed this man the damn ball. Continue to look for CeeDee Lamb. Everything good happens when you do. Please. So let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys stats. I talked about the Giants team stats. Let's talk about the Cowboys team stats. Dallas Cowboys average about 27.5 points per game offensively. They scored 220 points in 8 games. To put that in retrospect, they scored more than double than the Giants have scored points in 1 less game, which is hilarious. Dallas Cowboys 23 offensive touchdowns compared to the Giants 10 offensive touchdowns in the same amount of games. Wow, what a year to forget for the Giants after a great year last year. Dallas Cowboys 46.9% third down conversion on offense. Really, really good. Top 3 in the league offensively on converting on third down. Top 3 score rate. Dallas Cowboys score about 46% of their offensive drives. Second best in the league, only to the Philadelphia Eagles. Looking at Dallas, they average about 234.9 net passing yards per game compared to their 111.6. So looking at these 2 teams, Dallas throws it for about 80 more yards per game, whereas the Giants actually rush it for about 2.5 yards more per game. So the Giants' rushing attack has actually been a little bit better than Dallas's rushing attack, which is humorous when you look at the discrepancies between the 2 offensive lines. The Giants, I think, had 6 or 7 different combos of offensive linemen throughout their first several weeks, whereas the Cowboys have had almost the same unit for most of the season, and the Giants have rushed it more. Granted, they can't throw it as much, so they have to rely on the run, whereas Dallas can play a little bit with the run pass. Dallas also +5 turnover differential compared to the Giants -4. So another game where you can see Dallas taking it away a few times and hopefully, winning that turnover margin and securing a big victory. So let's move to the X factors here. 1 offense, 1 defense for both teams. You know the drill. We're going to keep it plain and simple this week. Darren Waller has to be the X factor for this Giants offense. You could say Saquon Barkley, but that'd probably be the most obvious choice. Darren Waller is probably the second most obvious choice. That's why we're taking him. Only averaging 48 yards per game. That's leading the Giants as far as receivers go. Nobody else is really close to that. I think the next closest was about 31 yards per game with Darius Slayton. Darren Waller has been the whole passing attack for the Giants. He's going to have to be big. Dallas Cowboys have not been great guarding tight ends. Obviously, Kittle a few weeks back was fantastic. And then last week, Goddard was 3 of 3 when being targeted before he went down hurt. So I think the Giants can exploit Dallas in the middle of the field with the tight end attack. Can Tommy DeVito get it to him? That's the question. Defensively for the Giants, it's going to be Kayvon Thibodeau. He's been awesome this year. 8.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 26 tackles on the season. I think the way you exploit Dallas at this point is attack Terrence Steele. Coming off the injury, he had a really bad week last week. Could be a little mental going into this week. I think if you line Thibodeau over Terrence Steele, you might get something going, Giants, on your defense. Looking at the Cowboys X factors here, Brandon Cooks is going to be the offensive X factor. I'm probably going to keep making him the X factor until he becomes that X factor and exceeds expectations. Only 25 targets through 8 weeks. That's about a little over 3 a week, which is awful. 17 catches. He's averaging about 2 catches on 3 targets a week. That is abysmal for somebody who is supposed to be your number 2 and big playmaker going down the field. 165 yards receiving through 8 weeks. That's about 23 a week. Terrible. 2 touchdowns on the year. He's actually averaging 23.6 receiving yards per game. So he's averaging under 24 receiving yards per game. And he's actually averaging less receiving yards per game than Tony Pollard is as running back. That is abysmal. Brandon Cooks, we need you. As I mentioned earlier with Tony Pollard's sake, hopefully this is a game Dallas is up several scores. And so you can try to work some things out. You can try to get some things going. You can get Tony Pollard going a little bit in the rushing attack. You can get Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks. You can get all these guys going in the passing attack, hopefully. This should be a big confidence boost game for Dallas Cowboys. Anybody who has been on the fringe about producing like a Michael Gallup or like a Brandon Cooks, someone who hasn't found their solidified spot, their solidified role on this team, this could be a game where you get right, you get some confidence, and you take that moving forward. And some things might work moving forward. It might, open up some holes for you. Defensively for the Cowboys, could be Jaron Kearse. I think he's going to be the middle of the field safety a bunch, on Darren Waller a bunch. 37 tackles on the season, 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, 1 interception. He's been very solid. Hasn't been great, but has been very, very solid as that safety linebacker kind of hybrid that Dan Quinn loves to play. So let's get to the 5 keys for Dallas Cowboys victory. Number 1, we're going to keep preaching it. We're going to keep preaching it, and we're going to keep preaching it. Red zone offense, 3 of 5 again last week, and if you make it 4 of 5, you win that game. Dallas, you have to get touchdowns in the red zone. The Giants are a team you should be able to push around a little bit. You should be able to get into the end zone here. Key number 2 to victory. I want 0 turnovers. Normally I come out here and say win the turnover differential. No. The Giants are not a team this year to take away the football, and they're definitely a team to give it up. So Dallas, I want to see you play a clean game offensively. I don't want to see any fumbles. Don't want to see any ill-advised interceptions, Dak. Go out there, play a clean game. I want 0 turnovers in this game. Number 3, kind of on that same motion. I want less than 2.5 sacks. I'm going to make a Dallas Cowboy prop bet here on Playbook Sports. I don't know what the odds would be. Under 2.5 sacks allowed against this Giants defensive front. Obviously, I've already mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau. Dexter Lawrence has been really good as well. And there's some others I'm not going to mention, but they have been fantastic. The Giants front 7 has really been the moneymaker for this defense. Deonte Banks on the back end has been awesome as well for them. So Dallas Cowboys under 2.5 sacks allowed against that Giants defense, please. Number 4, get Tony Pollard going. We got to get a run game going. You cannot rely on Dak Prescott to do everything all year long. You have to establish a run. Please let this be a Tony Pollard game. Dallas goes up several scores, and we just force feed Pollard until something works. Got to get these guys going. You got to get Tony Pollard going at some point, because a run game, if you don't have it, you're not going to win in the playoffs. So there's 2 things that translate in the playoffs, home to road. Good defense and a run game. And if you have a good defense with no run game, you could be SOL. Key number 5, 5th and final key to a Dallas Cowboy victory is you cut the head off the snake. You got to limit Saquon Barkley. Tommy DeVito playing 2 NFL games has been abysmal. In those 2 NFL games, he looks like he shouldn't really be on an NFL roster, let alone playing in an NFL game. Take away Saquon Barkley, make Tommy DeVito beat you. Seems like a really easy formula there. So Dallas Cowboys, those are your 5 keys to victory. Those are your 4 X factors, and those are the stats on the players and the teams. Let's get to the score prediction, what you all have been waiting for. Score prediction for Week 10 in Jerry World between the Giants and Dallas Cowboys. I have the Giants scoring 13 points and the Cowboys scoring 37 points, 37-13 Dallas. They will cover the 17-point spread. It makes me nervous. Last time they were this big of a favorite, it was against Arizona. We know how that finished. So Dallas Cowboys, come out and take care of business. You had a heartbreaking loss last week. Let's not make it 2 in a row. Thank you all for watching. Leave a comment down below. Like the video. Subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.